God, like you, Lord. You are beautiful.
In those days, the multitude being very great, and having nothing to eat, Jesus called his disciples, and said unto them, I have compassion upon the multitude, because they have now been with me 3 days, and have had nothing to eat. And if I send them away fasting to their own houses, they will faint in the way, for many of them come from afar. And his disciples answered him, From where can a man satisfy these with bread here in the wilderness? And he asked them, How many loaves do you have? And they said, 7. And he commanded the people to recline on the ground. And he took the 7 loaves, and gave thanks, and broke and gave to his disciples to set before them. And they did set before the people, and they had a few small fishes as well. And he blessed them, and commanded them to be set also before them. And so they ate, and were filled. And they took up 7 baskets of fragments that were left. And they who had eaten were about 4,000, and he sent them away. And immediately he entered into a ship with his disciples, and came into the parts of Dalmanutha. And the Pharisees came forth, and began to dispute with him, seeking a sign from heaven from him, tempting him. And he sighed deeply in his spirit, and said, Why does this generation seek a sign? Verily I say unto you, there shall be no sign given to this generation. And he left them, and entering into the ship again, he departed to the other side. Now the disciples had forgotten to take bread, and they did not have more than 1 loaf in the ship with them. And he charged them, saying, Take heed, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees, and of the leaven of Herod. And they reasoned amongst themselves, saying, Is it because we have no bread? And knowing it, Jesus saith unto them, Why do you reason that it is because you have no bread? Do you not yet perceive nor understand? Have you hardened your heart? Do you have eyes and do not see? Do you have ears and do not hear? And do you not remember? When I broke the 5 loaves among 5,000, how many baskets full of fragments did you take up? And they said unto him, 12. And when the 7 among 4,000, how many baskets full of fragments did you take up? And they said unto him, 7. And he said to them, How is it that you do not understand? And they came to Bethsaida, and they brought a blind man to him, and begged him to touch him. And he took the blind man by the hand, and led him out of the town. And when he had spat upon his eyes, and put his hands upon him, he asked him if he saw anything. And he looked up and said, I see men as trees walking. And after that he put his hand again upon his eyes, and made him look up. And he was restored, and saw all clearly. And he sent him away to his house, saying, Neither go into the town, nor tell it to any in the town. And Jesus and his disciples went out into the towns of Caesarea and Philippi. And in the way he asked his disciples, saying, Who do men say that I am? And they answered, John the Baptist. Some say Elijah. Others say one of the prophets. And he saith unto them, But who do you say that I am? And Peter answered and said to him, Thou art the Christ. And he charged them that they should tell no one of them. And he began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things, and be rejected by the elders and the chief priests and the scribes, and be killed, and after 3 days rise again. And he spoke that saying openly, and Peter took him and began to rebuke him. But when he had turned around and looked upon his disciples, he rebuked Peter, saying, Get behind me, Satan, for your thoughts are not of the things of God, but of the things of men. And when he had called the people and his disciples also, he said to them, Whosoever will come after me, let him deny himself, and take up his cross, and follow me. For whosoever will save his life shall lose it. But whosoever shall lose his life for my sake and the gospel's, he shall save it. For what shall it profit a man if he shall gain the whole world, and lose his own soul? Or what shall a man give in exchange for his soul? Therefore whosoever shall be ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, the Son of Man shall also be ashamed of him, when he comes in the glory of his Father with the holy angels. Mark's Gospel, chapter 9. And he said to them, Verily I say unto you, that there are some of those who stand here who shall not taste of death, until they have seen the kingdom come in power. And after 6 days Jesus took Peter and James and John, and led them up into a high mountain apart by themselves. And he was transfigured before them. and his clothing became shining, exceeding white as snow, such as no fuller on earth could whiten them. And there appeared to them Elijah with Moses, and they were talking with Jesus. And Peter answered and said to Jesus, Master, it is good for us to be here. Let us make 3 tabernacles, one for thee, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. For he did not know what to say, for they were very much afraid. And there was a cloud that overshadowed them. And a voice came out of the cloud, saying, This is my beloved Son, hear him. And suddenly, when they had looked around, they did not see anyone any more, except Jesus only, together with themselves. And as they came down from the mountain, he commanded them that they should tell no one the things that they had seen until the Son of Man had risen from the dead. And they kept that saying within themselves, questioning with one another what the rising from the dead is. And they asked him, saying, Why do the scribes say that Elijah must first come? And he answered and told them, Elijah truly does come first, and restores all things. And how has it been written of the Son of Man, that he should suffer many things and be mocked? But I say to you that Elijah has indeed come, and they have done to him whatever they desired, as it is written of him. And when he came to his disciples, he saw a great multitude around them, and the scribes questioning with them. And immediately all the people, when they saw him, were greatly amazed, and were running to him to greet him. And he asked the scribes, What are you discussing with them? And one of the multitude answered and said, Master, I have brought my son, who has a dumb spirit, to thee. And wherever he seizes him, he tears him, and he foams and gnashes his teeth, and pines away. And I spoke to thy disciples that they should cast him out, and they could not. And he answered and said, O faithless generation, how long shall I be with you? How long shall I bear with you? Bring him to me. And they brought him to him, and when he saw him, the spirit immediately tore him. And he fell upon the ground and wallowed, foaming. And he asked his father, How long ago has it been since this came to him? The father said, From a child. Ofttimes it has cast him into the fire, and into the waters to destroy him. But if thou canst do anything, have compassion upon us, and help us. And Jesus said to him, If you can believe, all things are possible to him who believes. And immediately the father of the child cried out and said with tears, Lord, I believe. Help my unbelief. When Jesus saw that the people came together, he rebuked the foul spirit, saying to him, Dumb and deaf spirit, I command you to come out of him, and enter no more into him. And it cried out, throwing him into convulsions, and came out of him. And he was like a dead one, so much so that many said, He is dead. But Jesus took him by the hand and lifted him up, and he arose. And when he had come into the house, his disciples asked him privately, Why could we not cast him out? And he said to them, This kind can come forth by nothing except by prayer and fasting. And they departed from there and passed through Galilee. And he did not desire that any man should know. For he taught his disciples and said to them, The Son of Man is delivered into the hands of men, and they shall kill him. And after he is killed, he shall rise the 3rd day. But they did not understand that saying, and were afraid to ask him. And he came to Capernaum, and being in the house, he asked them, What was it that you disputed amongst yourselves in the way? But they were silent, for in the way they had disputed amongst themselves who was the greatest. And he sat down and called the 12, and said to them, If any man desires to be first, he shall be last of all, and a servant of all. And he took a child, and set him in the midst of them. And when he had taken him in his hands, he said to them, Whosoever shall receive one of such children in my name receives me. And whosoever shall receive me does not receive me, but him who sent me. And John answered him, saying, Master, we saw one casting out demons in thy name, and he does not follow us. And we forbade him, because he does not follow us. But Jesus said, Do not forbid him, for there is no one who shall do a miracle in my name who can lightly speak evil of me. For he who is not against us is for us. For whosoever shall give you a cup of water to drink it by name, because you belong to Christ, verily I say unto you, he shall not lose his reward. And whosoever shall offend one of these little ones who believe in me, it is better for him that a millstone were hanged around his neck, and he were cast into the sea. And if your hand offends you, cut it off. It is better for you to enter into life maimed than to have 2 hands to go into hell, into the fire that never shall be quenched, where their worm dies not, and the fire is not quenched. And if your foot offends you, cut it off. It is better for you to enter into life lame, than to have 2 feet to be cast into hell, into the fire that never shall be quenched, where the worm dies not, and the fire is not quenched. And if your eye offends you, pluck it out. It is better for you to enter into the kingdom of God with 1 eye, than to have 2 eyes to be cast into hell fire, where the worm does not die, and the fire is not quenched. For every one shall be salted with fire, and every sacrifice shall be salted with salt. Salt is good, but if the salt has lost its saltiness, with what will you season it? Have salt in yourselves, and have peace with one another.